What about that? Why are they still working? Why are those 266 children over the periods of 1997 and 2005 dead, and not one social worker lost their jobs because of it? Only a cabinet minister.
Because social workers aren't, they aren't held responsible. If anything goes wrong, they're never personally held responsible, and I do not know why that is.
I think it's because we're dealing with a systemic problem, where the training from school means absolutely nothing once you hit the field, right? I think this is the same old study where you look at it at all the services and you come across where a 25-year-old comes into work and all they've done is put a young body to the same old head, and nothing will ever change. Because right now, as we talked about earlier, they're still working on a model that is absolutely gone. It's
what
obsolete.
model?
The model that says that scientifically you can predict things.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit for people?
Okay. If I have this lighter here and I push it in that direction, of course it's supposed to land there. And if I do it again, it's supposed to land in the same spot. But did it? No, of course not. But when that happened, scientists in the past said, we made a mistake. And they refused to record different things. See, what I'm saying is that nothing is predictable. You can get from point A to point B on a straight line, but you can also do this, up and down. But you also get to point B. So the job of science is not to say you are going to go from point A to point B and it's going to be in a direct line. It could be whichever way. That's the job of science. Observe and report what's going on. How did it get there? Not predict what's going to happen.
Well,
This is what they're doing with the children right now. If I remove them, they're going to be in a really good place.
Well, they're going to
Do
be
we
They're
know
not
that
even, they can't even possibly think that. They remove children, and I've heard so many parents tell me that social services tried to put their child in an alternative school, and you know, they don't have their sports anymore. Like, I mean, they're totally, their whole lives are just an
Completely
alternative school.
altered.
How
So
can
can-
that benefit the child?
So we go back again to the same problem. It's a systemic problem.
Right, yeah.
It's a systemic problem where really the Ministry of Social Services is not interested in providing the services to socialize the child. Right?
So what about psychology? What do you think about the psychological approach that's behind the ministry, and what are they really doing there, and is there maybe a better approach that could be done from your opinion? I mean, you're just one person, but
Yeah, well, of course, guys who are into deconstruction and looking at science the way I do will be the last ones to be hired for a job from them. 'Cause I'm gonna end up-
deconstruction?
Yeah.
Can you tell us what deconstruction is?
Deconstruction means that you are, whatever a child exhibits is not a sickness or a disease, it's a problem. And the problems come from language and the way they describe the problem. So you zero in on the language and you break down that language. For example, if a teen comes out to me and says, I am really bored, right? I just go back and say, do you know what the word bore means? Doesn't it mean it's like a huge void, a huge hole? Now you tell me what's missing. That's deconstruction. The old way is, I am bored. Okay, take some Prozac. And you're done. Take some antidepressant. Take some happy pill, like they used to say.
How people.
Right? You see the shift?
Prince
But this is
Valiant.
coming back to taking responsibility for your own mental and emotional states and having compassion for those around you. And this isn't implemented in the schools and the society and with social
They
workers.
cannot do that because somebody from your country, Michael White, will tell you that the educational system, just like in Canada, was not designed to create people who think. It was organized and designed to produce children who are going to acquiesce, who are going to agree with everything, not ask a single question, not be critical of anything, accept your role within society as, if my dad was in the working class, I'm staying in the working class. I don't belong anywhere else. I have no business going to university. In fact, even if I don't go to university, I don't have the right to ask a question. The questions why are removed the moment you hit 18.
And this point that you've just made reminds me that, you know, a lot of times the ministry thinks, you know, seems to think that homes with children who live in poverty are at a disadvantage, but in reality it doesn't matter if your parents are rich or poor. It matters what attitude they give off, and they may show you how to go and find all those resources that you need. Even if you live in poverty, they may help you, you know, right up to the point that you're filling out your Canada student loan papers. But you may have a parent that's wealthy and says, you know what, here's the money, don't bother me anymore. Which one is more beneficial? You know, in my eyes, it's the parent that shows the child to be resourceful on their own.
If you understand, I mean, if they were to understand the latest advancements on the understanding how a child brain develops, which we just talked about through brain cells, then of course money has got nothing to do with it. In fact, that was corroborated by the government through an Ontario report dealing with this specifically that was commissioned by the federal government, is the Ontario 2000 report. And they talk about brain development and the study that was done to see if there was any difference between the intellectual levels of poor children and rich children. They came to the conclusion that it's got nothing to do with that. It has to do with the amount of time that parents spend with their children.
Well, this is interesting then, because, you know, it looks like almost 100% of the children that are taken into foster care live in either in homes where they're receiving income assistance or have recently received income assistance, you know, but basically, you know, most families who have their children apprehended are either working poor or dependent on the government for finances.
Or have been in foster homes themselves.
Or have been in foster homes themselves, or are Aboriginal.
Yeah.
And that's all of them.
Yeah.
And a couple little white rich kids in there. Or maybe two.
With bad attitudes.
But you see what we're talking about? This is not about money. This is not about social class. It's about the way that the brain develops and the way that parents watch that. If you have a child who's in the middle of growing cells for music and you expose him to silence, then that kid will be very quiet, won't he?
He'll lose those brain cells that we're working on that. And so the same goes for parenting skills, learning how to love, learning and teenagers especially.
Homeschooling.
And teenagers.
But now they'll say that you're neglecting your children socially because you're homeschooling them. I mean, these are no-win.
That is the absolute opposite.
Yeah.
It is the absolute opposite. You know, just think of it this way. Let's just say a child is 4 or 5 years old, and for some reason we can pinpoint to a production of cells where he's about to learn about how to keep the cells that deal with love. But there's little guys in foster care, and the foster mom just had to go to a bingo game.
Yeah.
Right?
And it all comes back to education.
Yes. Yeah.
And children can't possibly be, you know, they don't have the desire for the affection of a stranger. You know,
of course not.
Of
course not.
Not what
And
they
tell you
need.
what, education is not instruction. Education is an intergenerational commitment of the old one to the young ones.